Hello, my fantastic fifth graders. Today is the day we are finally going to start adding and subtracting fractions. You're going to take all the information that you've been learning throughout this entire unit so far and start to apply it to adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. So today we're doing 6.1 and 6.2. Add and subtract unlike denominator. So here's the thing. A fraction is just telling you part of a whole. The denominator is, The denominator is telling you how many pieces it was broken into. The numerator is telling you how many pieces you have. Denominator, how many pieces it got cut. Numerator, how many pieces do you get? So when we start adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators, the first thing we're actually going to do is make them have the same denominator. We're not going to deal with any of that unlike denominators. We are going to find that common denominator. So I want you to think back all the way back to 6.4, where we learned how to find a common denominator and equivalent fractions. We've got 3 different ways, and that's what we're going to be doing today. Most of the fractions that you see today are smaller than typical, and hopefully to see what their common denominator is won't be too much. So for the steps of adding and subtracting unlike denominators, step 1, make both denominators the same. And this means equivalent fractions. Okay, step 1 is to make both of those denominators the same. You need to have an equivalent fraction. Okay, so the problem that we're going to follow these steps with and practice on is 1/2 plus 1/4. 1/2 plus 1/4. So the first step is to make both the denominators the same, have equivalent fraction. So my denominators are 2 and 4. Now, can one of them become the other? In other words, can 2 multiply by something to become 4? I choose 2 because it's a smaller number. 4 cannot be multiplied by, well, it can be multiplied by 1/2, but to become 2. So always go for the smaller number. Can the smaller number become the bigger number? And in this case, yes. So that means my denominator should be 4. And honestly, if I wrote them out, I would see that as well. My common denominator is 4. So my first step is to make those equivalent fractions. 4 times 1 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 2 is 2. Step 2. Now, this is going back all the way back to 4th grade. Now, 4th grade, you guys did learn how to add fractions with common denominators. You already know that for step 2, you add the numerator. Add the pieces you have, aka numerator. Okay? The reason why you're only adding the numerator and not the denominator is because the numerator is what you have. You have 2 out of the 4 pieces and 1 out of the 4 pieces. This is just telling you how it was cut apart. So step 2 is you add the pieces you have. Never, ever add / subtract denominator. No. You don't do it. Never, ever, ever, ever subtract or add the denominators. You just add or subtract the numerators because that's what you have. The denominators is just kind of telling you how it was cut apart. So now I have 2/4 plus 1/4. 2/4 plus 1/4. 2 plus 1 is 3, and it's still cut into fourths. So my answer is 3/4. Step 1, make both denominators the same. Step 2, add the numerator. Never, ever, ever add the denominator. Step 3 is to simplify if you have to. Let's do a few more. Find a common denominator. Make both equivalent fractions. Then, that's really all there is to it. We're going to do 3/5 plus 1/2. I do like writing them one on top of the other so I can make my equivalent fractions to the side here. To each their own. So I have the numbers 5 and 2. I am now going to list all of the multiples so I can find my least common multiple. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Ah, there we go. Our least common multiple is 10. 10, 10. Now, what did I multiply 5 by to get 10? 5 times 2 is 10. 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times 5 is 10. 1 times 5 is 5. Now I add my numerators. 6 plus 5 is 11. I never, ever, ever add my denominators because this is saying I had 6 out of the 10 pieces. Miss Grimm had 5 out of the 10 pieces. How many pieces do we have? Well, we have 11 out of the 10 pieces. Did some of you see something that's going on with the 11? The top number is bigger than the bottom number. If you see something like this, that is called an improper fraction. And I tell the story about Ned, the numerator, and his donkey, the denominator. Ned can never get bigger than his donkey. It would squish him, and you don't squish your friends. When you do that, it's improper. Don't squish your friends. So what do we need to do? We need to think how many 10s are in 11 and how many 10s are left over. So this becomes 1 10 is in 11 with 1 out of the 10 remaining. All right, so that's how you add. Now let's look at division. Division? Subtraction. Oh, how I wish we were doing division. I actually really enjoy fraction division. I know. Gorman, you're crazy. We're going to do 6 and 4. So 5/6 minus 1/4. So I have my numbers 6 and 4. The prime factors of 6 are 2 times 3. The prime factors of 4 are 2 times 2. What do they have in common? They've got 1, 2, and then the stragglers. Stragglers. Now, what does that equal? 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 12. So that means the least common denominator is 12. 12, 12. Now, how did they become 12? Well, 6 times 2 is 12. Whatever I do to the denominator, I must do to the numerator. 5 times 2 is 10. 4 times 3 is 12. Whatever I do to the denominator, I must do to the numerator. And that's because you're really just multiplying by 1. 3 times 1 is 3. Now, the biggest thing that I need to remember is that I'm subtracting. Because if you got 13/12, you didn't subtract, you added. And that is absolutely something that, especially if I'm going quickly, I don't pay attention to. So 10 minus 3 is 7, and I end up with 7/12. 7/12 is simplified because 7 is prime and 12 is not divisible by 7. All right, you guys, that is how you add and subtract fractions. Step 1, get a common denominator. Make those equivalent fractions. Step 2, add the numerators. Step 3, simplify. Oh, simplifying. All right, you guys, have a great day, and I will see you in a little bit.